Ceri Jones.
Hi guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. This week, I travelled down to Hampshire to meet my guest at his home at Diva Springs. He's been an angling journalist for over 30 years and has many notable achievements to his name, including catching the first UK 20-pound rainbow trout, a 70-pound King Salmon on the fly, plus a 5-pound Arctic Grayling caught in Alaska. He also talks of his new book, Fly Fishing Trout in Small Waters. Welcome to my chat with Peter Cockwill. Thanks for inviting me to Diva Springs, and it's now your home as well.
Yeah, oddly enough, I live here now. I never thought that would happen, but you never know in life what's going to happen, do you?
And how many long years you been here?
Nearly 5 now, yeah.
Wow.
But I'm not the manager. Stuart Barrett, he's the manager, and he's the guy who runs the fishery and rears all these lovely fish. And I just do a couple of days of infill things, talk to the people, work a little bit, and it seems to work.
It's idyllic. So where were you before then?
Well, I had a shop for 31 years altogether. But I also, at the same time, I was running a syndicate fishery in Ceri. So I ran that one for 34 years.
So where was the shop? In Guildford, is it?
On the edge of Guildford, yeah, a little village called Albury, where Albury Estate Fisheries are. That's quite a well-known small stillwater complex.
Oh, right, yeah. Is that by a roundabout, the entrance to it? No?
There's quite a few different fisheries down through the valley of the little
right.
River Tillingbourne. And yeah, they've been there a long time and very successful too.
So you had a tackle shop there for how long?
That one was for 20 odd years, and then prior to that I was in a nearby town for another 11 years before that. But I started it with a guy called Gary Brooker who wrote Whiter Shade of Pale, if you remember that, old song. And
What started the shop, you mean?
Yeah, we started it together because Gary's a fisherman, and it ended up with just me. But and Gary passed away a few months ago now. So yeah, he's been an active fishing friend for a very long time. And it was really him who got me into travelling. Because, I'm Cornish, apart from moving and living in Surrey, I hadn't really gone anywhere in my sad little life, I suppose. And then Gary said to me one day, do you want to come out to Oregon with me? I thought, okay. And he'd met this guy, Jim Teeney, when he was on tour out there with his, that's what he does. And he'd made friends with Jim. And so we went and stayed with Jim for a fortnight and went fishing. And I made friends instantly with Jimmy. And so it went on from there.
Up until that point, did you fish rivers?
Oh yeah, I learnt my fishing on little rivers in Cornwall.
Is it? You've seen the Cornwall. Do you know what? I couldn't quite make out your accent, where you actually came from, but it is Cornwall originally then.
Yeah, no, look, you're by, of course I be, and I.
I went last summer. I met Simon Kidd down in... I had to go to Snowby, the actual place in Plymouth. And then I was going to saltwater fly fish we were going to then, but for the bass, but it didn't work out. And he said, "Have you ever fished Colliford?" he said. And I said, "No, I'd never even heard of the place." And I went there this season, right, this year, around about August time. I just did a podcast on it actually. Honest to God, it blew my mind.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Oh, and because what happened when I was fishing it, he joined me later on in the evening, but the water was down. And I don't know, there was a sense to the place that it was lovely on the moors, with that wildness. I like it. And I started fishing, just walking the bank, and then all of a sudden I had this almighty boil of a fish in the side. And then, because I read up on it, and I heard this fish up to £9, I heard, wild fish over the years. And I thought, Jesus, I just had a great pull there now. I thought it was a big fish. And then it happened again and again. I thought, something's not right here now. And I realised then, because what happened, I was fishing a team of wets, but I actually had an 8 pound common carp.
Ah,
There's loads of commons there.
wow.
And so Simon came later, we had lots of brown trout and carp on the fly. Incredible. What was nice, the evening was lovely. The sun went down, and then the full moon came up at the same time, right? And it was quite surreal. And we went back then, and this is what I like after a day's fishing, go back to a nice pub. And what was the name of that pub now on the moors?
Jamaica Inn.
That's it.
Yeah.
And then we had a pint or two in the Jamaica Inn. These old-fashioned glasses as well, you know, the one with the like mottled, the old pints, and it was
Fantastic place. It's full of history, isn't it? Jamaica
yeah,
Inn?
the feel of the place.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you see Bodmin Moor on a misty, foggy night. It's creepy.
Yeah,
I mean, you can really believe in the animal that's supposed to be there, the beast of Bodmin Moor. You can believe it on some of those nights.
yeah.
I started work for the River Board in what you would pronounce as Launceston,
Yeah,
but it's actually pronounced Lanston.
right.
And that's where I started work, in the fisheries lab there.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, because what I really am is a water chemist, but that was me on the fisheries down there. And I had a scooter back then, and one night I had to get home from Bodmin to Lanston and then back to Bude in a thick fog. And going over Bodmin Moor then, in a little old scooter, I could only see the white line just. And I just had to follow the white line. And if I'd broken down, I would have had no idea where I was.
Yeah,
But, it was different then. You didn't see cars.
yeah.
It's an awfully long time ago.
I'm looking forward to going back there again, actually, next year.
Colliford's wonderful. I fished it from when it was first flooded.
Was it?
Yeah. And
It's a nice shape, isn't it? It's just
oh, it's a great
fingers
place.
and
Did you go
arms.
out onto a place called Stuffle Point?
I just stay near the dam.
Okay, no,
Both banks.
there's a place at Stuffle Point we used to like going to, but that you see, when I grew up, a 12-ounce fish was huge,
Yeah,
and if you had a trout of a pound in some of those little streams, it was phenomenal.
yeah,
And the lakes used to be the old, what's now called Lower Tamar Lake, which was stocked with 6-inch brownies, and a fish of a pound from that was phenomenal. But of course that was in the days pre-cormorant, when you could stock small fish and they would grow if they could. Look at my diaries now and some of the pictures there of fish from the Tamar averaging 5 ounces. Well, that's all there was, and you were happy with it.
yeah.
The size limit was 7 inches in Cornwall. And if you could make it stretch to 7 inches on a ruler, well, smack, you took it home.
Can you imagine if you could have a time travel, if you came back then and just walked these pools, what we've just been on tonight. Wow, to see these double figure fish.
Life moves on, doesn't it? And it
Yeah.
changes. But I still love the wild fish, if you like, and the little rivers. And I got a friend from Cornwall who's coming to see me tomorrow that we went to school together. And we do go and walk those streams when I'm down home. And God, do you remember the 10-ouncer I caught in that pool?
Yeah.
When I was shouting for the net.
So how did it all start for you then? When did you pick up a rod for the first time?
Oh, my dad, because we lived in Bude on the north coast, and there was a canal right outside us. And my dad got me fishing when I was about 5.
Was it?
And it went on from there, because the canal was literally 50 yards outside the door, and it had exceptional roach and dace in it back in those days. And I really loved them, and I sort of got into trout with a spinner, with a little tiny spinning rod and a size 0 Meps. And I was a bad boy then, really, because it was deadly. And my next door neighbour, a guy called Tony Guscott, he said to me one day, he said, it's time you learnt to fish properly. He said, you're going to fly fish from now on. And he taught me to fly fish.
Did he?
I still see his son nowadays, we fish together. And then another guy there was friends with my dad, he was a postman. He taught me to tie flies when I was 14. And so it went on.
Have you still got your first fly rod?
No. I've still got my first spinning rod.
Have you?
Yeah.
I bet it was Woolworth. Everyone seemed to ask. They had it from Woolworth.
Well, I bought it in a local shop in Bude. So
Right.
there's no name on it, but it was solid glass, blue, and you could turn it in a complete circle.
Yeah.
And yeah, crikey, rods changed, didn't they? And then I remember buying my first proper rod. I went out to Exeter and bought a Hardy Gem.
Oh.
And being really smart, I was riding my bicycle up the towpath on the canal with the rod in its two sections, and somehow managed to put it in the front wheel.
Oh.
Bye-bye, rod. That was a sad day.
Had you been fishing or are you going?
I was moving places, moving to a different spot.
Oh, no.
But, and then I sort of got into competition casting, I've no idea why. And we started with split cane, because this newfangled fiberglass was coming into things. Very suspicious of that. And we used to do casting tournaments down at Bude on the canal. You'd have your horrible old split cane rod and umpteen gazillion false casts and 19 yards, 2 inches, yay, look at that. And then somebody had one of these glass fibre rods and a shooting head. I mean, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
And they stood up there and whack, 34 yards. What? And, life was changing quite quickly in the fishy world.
Because I remember I came into it when fiberglass was the material then, split cane. I've never owned a split cane rod.
Well.
No, but the fiberglass, I built my very own, the very first rod I had, I built. And after school, the guy, time flies, and then I built the rod as well. And I kept it quiet because my mother didn't want me to go fishing. And I remember I saved up some money as well, and I bought a rimfly reel, hid it in the house, and built this rod. And then
what was the blank you used? And can you remember?
I've still got it. There's no name on the blank, and he was 10 foot, and it's it feels like when you're holding it, feels like there's a bit of lead on the tip. It's. But I used that rod then, and I caught 3 fish the first day I went in Eggleston and in the reservoir, Port Albert. I haven't looked back since then. And I'd like to. I've always thought that the romance of it, maybe using it again, all those years ago.
But those early glass fibre rods that we used in fly fishing, you didn't know any different. You thought they were fantastic.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I used to fish, when I moved up to Ceri, I fished Weirwood Reservoir over in Sussex. And I had a B. James Mark 1. I mean, at the butt section, it was as thick as my thumb.
Was it?
But I thought it was wonderful.
And then Carbon came along then, didn't it?
Yeah, and the chap who taught me to fly fish, when I moved away, I can clearly remember writing to him, because there was no phone then, there was no email, nothing, just wrote to him. And I said, Tony, I was fishing Weirwood last week and I had a rainbow of 1 pound 12 ounces. And the letter came back saying, your scales must be wrong. Because, a trout of £1 was something. And 1 pound 12 rainbow. And then gradually the whole thing changed, didn't it?
Yeah. I remember a similar sort of thing. I was catching them sort of pound and a quarter. And I remember the one day I had a 2 pound trout, a rainbow trout. And I brought it home. And it's like now, that's why everyone wants social media now, to take a picture of themselves. Mm-hmm. The only thing we could do then was bring it home just to show everyone, And I can remember putting it on a plate on the cooker and I couldn't stop keeping my eyes off it, just looking at it. And I couldn't wait the following morning to get up to look at it again,
Wow.
But for £2, and to think that people didn't even think about a 2 pound trout now.
No, I know. I mean, I so badly wanted to catch a 2 pound brown trout. I'd never even seen one. until I was 22-ish, I would guess.
Yeah.
And I really, really wanted to catch a 2-pound brown. And when I'd moved up here into Ceri, then I moved when I was 21, there was a couple of little old National Trust lakes near me, and they stocked them with 100 6-inch browns and rainbows once a year. And I got my first 2-pound brown in there.
Wow.
And, you know, if you got a take in a day, it was something. And I used to fish it, oddly enough, with a guy called Colin Harms. And Colin then went on from living there to create Dameron trout fishery.
I was going to mention Dameron to you, yeah. I never fished it, but I always used to remember looking at the back of trout fishermen, these little lads, Dameron was always there, you know.
It was the first of the real, I suppose you'd call it, commercial day ticket waters.
And Dameron Blues.
Yeah, that was subsequent to that, yeah. But, I mean, I got on front page of Angling Times with a 7-pound 4-ounce rainbow. Monster in its day.
From Dameron.
Yeah. But you see, that was when Dick Walker used to fish it, Bill Sibbons, Terry Griffiths, Charles Jardine, Trevor Hoseby, all the great names from the day.
Yeah. Trevor Hoseby, I forgot that name. The dog nobbler.
Yeah, he invented the nobbler, yeah.
Yeah, all those waters. One of the first ones I fished, the named waters, was Avington.
Mm-hmm.
And we camped. We were allowed to do it at the time on the Itchen, a school trip, and it was like magical, you know, to go and see these pools, 3 pools, and the Itchen, it goes alongside, isn't it?
Yeah,
yeah.
Itchen Carrier goes through it, yeah.
Yeah, Roy Ward and Sam Holland at the time then. Yeah, it was quite magic. I think it's still going, isn't it?
Yeah, Avington's still going, yeah. I mean, Roy sadly passed a long time ago, and of course so did Sam before him.
Right.
But in fact, when Sam passed away, he wasn't living on the fishery then, he lived on a fish farm somewhere else. Roy told me what had happened, and and he had to get Sam's guns out of the way from the home. And he said, you've been after a rifle for a long time, because him and I used to shoot a lot. And he said, Sam's 2.2 is got now with a gun merchant, but he said you could get it. And that's what I've got. I've still got his 2.2.
Wow.
And his son, Howard, is going to come up here sometime to put a few rounds through his dad's gun.
Oh, that's nice, isn't it?
It's that sort of continuity thing in fishing, which I really like.
How did you start off writing for the magazines?
Oh, yeah, that was down to Avington, because I was there one day and I'd written something about making a tandem lure for fishing at Queen Mother Reservoir. I'd started to fish there, and I wrote about it and I put it into the mag, and they printed it. Just, you know, how to put the link together to make a tandem lure. And John Wilshaw was at Avington that day. He was the first editor, wasn't he?
I remember John Wilshaw, yeah.
Yeah, and he said, have you got anything else? I went, well, no. And he said, well, write me something. And that's what started it. You know, just a chance meeting.
Down at Avington?
Yeah, no clear working plan behind it at all. And I mean, I'm not very smart at all. I'm not a very clever guy at all, but I just found I could write. And in fact, it was John who, I caught a cheetah trout down there of 9.14, and John took the photo of it. And so it just went on from there.
That's the good thing about the magazines. Well, it's changed now, but Trout Fisherman. You had credible names writing in the magazines, whereas now with social media, there could be hundreds of people online now telling people how to do things, you know. And it's just everyone seems to think there's a book in them, or they need to tell
the instant expert stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
I gotta set the scene while we're talking here as well now. We're in your cottage, in the kitchen, the most cosiest place going, and you're actually back and forth going to the stove making a chili con carne.
Well, it's fun, isn't it? And it's,
Oh yeah, it
I mean,
smells. If it tastes half as good as it smells, it's going to taste good.
you've got to eat it, yeah, yeah. But one of the loveliest things about living here is that we often have people in for a cup of tea or something, and some biscuits and things, and the fishermen who come here, they just love that little extra bit.
Yeah.
And it's been very nice. And my wife Sue, she's a dear really, and she just likes having the fishermen around. She's not really a fisher person herself, but she's been to Alaska 5 times with me.
I see.
And she can catch, but it's not really her. But she just loves the whole thing.
I'm trying to think, when was the first time we actually did meet? And it's one of two it is, and I think it was the first time we actually met. We did a feature down in White House Mill.
Yeah, I remember the fishery.
Yeah.
What was the guy called who owned it? Was he was a Peter?
Yeah, Peter
He
Hunt.
was.
Peter and Barbara Hunt.
That's it, Peter Hunt. Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, he passed away a good few years ago now.
Really?
Yeah, but she kept the fishery going. I don't know if it's still open now. He was a funny sort of character. He was one of these guys, he had a beautiful fishery, looked after it, put some quality fish in, but he didn't really want anybody to fish it. You know?
You can become very possessive about your fishery,
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I can see that because, I ran a syndicate in Ceri for 34 years. I never fished it. But unless people treated it really, really well, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And
yeah, so White House Mill it was that day. And I remember you actually had a big brown. No, there was another guy, a local angler. He had a big brown. I remember taking photographs of it on the day. It was a terrible day. It was raining. It was a mucky day. I do remember that. And then shortly after then, we went to Garmfrud.
I remember that day, and do you know, I knew I'd been to Garnfruit when I went there 3-4 years ago now, and I knew I'd been there before, and I just couldn't remember the circumstances. Yeah. So it was you, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then years went by, and then I happened to go to the 30th anniversary of Trout Fisherman in Rutland Water. And you were there then, and we went out for an hour or two on a boat. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, we fished briefly for an hour or two, I think we did.
I love the big waters like Rutland and stuff, but nowadays I don't get that many opportunities to do it. But I do love the big waters.
That's my bag. That is.
It's your thing, isn't it?
Waters,
yeah. Hey, are you all right with mashed potato and veggies with the chilli?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You'll probably live, Ceri. Don't worry too much about it. I mean, obviously you're Welsh. I'm Cornish. We got Celtic origin. Ceri, tuck in. Well, I've just put some for me. And but you must have known Taff Price.
Never met him.
Didn't you?
No, I never met him. No.
Because he was a lovely guy. Because I used to, I don't know how it happened, but I used to go over to when Vineyards had a retail shop in Kent. I used to go over there every Saturday or sometimes other days in the week and help with putting the orders together. And, that's how I got to know Taff and John and all those guys really well.
Didn't he pass away recently?
Yeah, last year Taff passed away, yeah. Me and Charles did the speech for at his funeral. And we did it jointly, the two of us together.
Yeah.
And that was a very, very nice day. And they were filming it and sending it out live or something. So it meant I couldn't tell the story I wanted to tell about Taff. Because it was all in a very posh church and things. Tuck in, please.
Cheers.
Taff took me to South Africa at some stage a long time ago now for a tour with the Federation of South African Fly Fishers and things. And we had a fantastic time. But as time went on, the opportunity finally came to repay him when a guest who was going to go on a trip with me to Kodiak had to cancel at short notice, but the trip all paid for and stuff, so I was able to phone Taff and say, do you want to come? All you got to do is find your flight. So he came, and we fished steelhead and stuff. And one day we were walking up the river, and you had to follow the bear trails and then to where you want to fish with the guide and fish back. And part way on the trail, 3 big furry heads pop out the bushes in front of us, and the mother's woofing at us a bit, which is always a little disconcerting. And well, I've seen a lot of bears and they don't worry me so much now, but and anyway, they stood up, and if you wave your arms and shout, eventually they get the message and they wandered off.
What, the grizzlies?
And Kodiak, the biggest grizzlies in the world. So I said to Taff, hey, God, that was good, wasn't it? Your first bear, you know. And he said, yeah. He said, that was good. And he said, did you hear that noise? I said, what, the mother woofing at us? He said, no, that other noise. What noise? He said, like that. I said, I didn't hear that. What bloody hell was that? He said, that was my arse puckering.
I can imagine.
I couldn't say that in church, could I?
Well. I've never seen them. I've been to Sweden, and I've seen black bear at a distance, and I've seen elk.
Well, I mean, the difference between the two is that grizzlies can't climb trees, but black bears can. So you don't quite know what to do then, do you? Do you run or climb a tree? Yeah, well, I've been going to Alaska now for 35 years, and I've seen a lot of bears, and I think I'm really at the stage I'd rather not see another one, thank you.
One of the funniest things I seen last year was on the island on Corrib. The guy I was fishing with at the time, Jimmy Turrell, and he sat down, started to make some lunch, and I turned my back on him, walking to the water, to the lake, to fill the kettle. Next thing, you could hear a big commotion and a shouting. I looked behind, and he was having a one-on-one with a big swan.
Oh, no. And
the swan, he was tumbling on the floor, and the swan was going for him, you know, proper fighting.
God.
And so when I put the pictures up, because I thought I should have actually gone to help to break it up, but the photographer and me, I just grabbed my phone and started taking pictures. It was hilarious. And then I put the pictures up on social media, and apparently it's a well-known swan that goes around the islands when the anglers are on the island wanting food and attacking them. Not as bad as a bear, mind. So have you got any goals left? Because you've been to so many places now.
Question I can never really easily answer. I've been lucky in fishing, Ceri. I've had some lovely fish, and I've been to some great places. You probably know that my great love is really to catch grayling. I prefer them to just about anything. And I had a long love affair with the Arctic Grayling. I think I like smaller, prettier fish. I would dearly love to go and catch brook trout again one day. I think simply because they're just so beautiful. But I guess it'll always be grayling that I really love. And I see, when I lived in Cornwall, there's a few grayling on the Tamar, but not a huge number. And we used to fish for them in the winter months. We trotted red worm and things. And I had a fish there in the upper reaches of £1.7 one day. And that did it. That's all I wanted to do was catch grayling after that. And it's been something that's stuck with me.
Will you do it now over the winter months?
Yeah, I do a little bit on the chalk streams here, yeah. It's just one of those things that a certain fish seems to get you, doesn't it? It's like you with the big brown trout that you like to chase. And it's something that just gets you as a passion.
Yeah. The grayling, I have caught grayling, and I've chatted with the boys, friends of mine, they were, you know, obsessive, they were into it. And it's never really gripped me. But I will have 1 or 2 days with them this year.
Well, they don't get very big, they don't fight much, but they're just lovely. And it's hard to answer, you know, why you can like them, but I'm just walking over to a cabinet here. I've got something here I made when I was at school, when I was 14. How did I know that grayling were going to be my great love? That I'd go and make a wooden grayling out of elm.
Nice job.
How could I have known?
14.
That's creepy, isn't it?
Nice job too. Seeing that carved fish there now, in front of us now, on the wall. You've got a big rainbow.
That was the first ever 20-pounder. That was 20 pounds 7 ounces at Avington in 1986.
British record, rainbow trout, Peter Cockwill, Avington, Hampshire.
The first of the 20s. And even now, a 20-pound rainbow is very, very big. It's hard to get them that size. You know, that was back in the, as you say, the Sam Holland, Roy Ward days, pre-triploid.
Yeah, that'd have been a hen then, yeah. What time of year was that? September.
Usually those very big fish back then, they were what we used to call maiden fish. They were sort of like a natural triploid. Had never actually come into egg condition. So a bit of an oddball type fish, which just grew.
Have you got many fish cased?
I did have. There's a grayling over there, which came from Great Bear Lake when I was doing my chase for a big Arctic Grayling. That's £2.14. And that was a 360-degree mount, which Chris Elliott did. But over the years, I had a lot of reproductions done of fish I caught up in Alaska, and would bring the fish back or have it sent over. So I did have quite a collection in my shop. Yeah, he did the big rainbow here for me.
The first big fish I had done, I wanted to have it done by somebody who knew what they were doing, because I thought I'll never get one done again. And the name was Derek Frampton.
I know that name, yeah.
And he's from just outside the M25, King's Langley. And I went to see him, and he's a professional taxidermist for the Museum of London. He is.
Oh, wow.
And he was telling me the story that there are only 3 master taxidermists in the country. There's different levels, but there's only 3, and he's one of them. But he doesn't enjoy trout. He says he doesn't enjoy fish. His passion is birds.
Right.
And when you go into his house, he lived in this big bungalow. And as you go to the hallway, there's a full-grown peacock.
Oh.
The feathers. He was incredible. And it's quite a story, actually, because he said when he was a boy, how did it start with him? He said when he was a boy, he used to see like a sparrow or something beside the road, and he used to enjoy cutting it up. And I'm thinking, yeah, there's something not quite right there, you know. But it became into a passion, and so I thought to myself, right, he did 1 trout for me. 2 trout he's done actually for me. And at least I know then in time to come, like Cooper is the name now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it'll be, worth having it done. And if you're going to get it done, have it done. Like, he's got such a name, he has, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Chris
I mean,
Elliott.
I don't know what this big rainbow would fetch in its day. I mean, I've obviously got the record paperwork and everything, but I guess when I snuff it, Sue will make a few quid out of it.
And it's a bone-fronted case.
Yeah. So it cost a lot of money now
Yeah.
to get that done.
The thing is, I think over here, there's not really many collectors or a passion for them. I think Germany and the States are people who are into their taxidermy. Because I think there were fish in Blagdon Lodge back a few years ago now. They disappeared.
They were stolen, weren't they?
Yeah. And there was talk then that they went to Germany.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I often wondered what happened to them, because that was the original rainbow record, the 8-pound 8-ounce one, wasn't it? From Blagdon.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you had that in your home, how could you show it off to somebody knowing it's been stolen?
It out, wouldn't it? Yeah.
You can't do that sort of thing, can you?
No.
It was quite funny when I was closing the shop. I'd got all these reproductions there of different fish, mostly from Alaska and things. And I wasn't going to have anywhere to put them, so they had to go. And I gave a couple away. And then a chap I knew who I did a lot of corporates for, he said he'd have them all to put in his home. So great, he took them all. And then it turned out this was a gentleman who then bought Deaver Springs. So his big house here on Deaver, he wanted all those fish in his house that's here. So all those fish that I'd got rid of, all of a sudden, I'm back living with them again.
I noticed there's one just above the kettle there, if I remember right, when I walk in the lodge. Huge.
Yeah,
what is that?
That's a King Salmon Chinook. Yeah, that I caught up in Alaska. I mean, I got lucky with that one because it's hard to find the really big kings now. They don't seem to be doing quite so well.
You estimate the size of those fish then?
Yeah, you do it on length and girth. You know, there's a formula, isn't there? Length times girth squared divided by 800 gets you pretty close to the weight. And so that one was 51 by 34, and it comes out around 70 odd pound.
That was 70, was it? Wow.
And over the years, I'd hooked a few around the sort of 50 plus mark and lost every one.
Was that on a double-hander?
No, single-handed rods. But that one behaved itself, and we got it. Took the length and girth and everything and put it back again. But actually, the guy who took the photos of it is now a really serious contributor to trout and salmon. Is Don Staziker. He was on the trip with us.
Did you know that fish was in the run of the pool, or just?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's very, very clear, the river, and we'd been watching it for a couple of hours, and fishing hard for it. And then at one stage, I just saw it lift and smack its mouth, and I thought, oh God, that's got to be me, and it was.
So what sort of water was it like? Was it fast flowing? Or
it's fast, yeah. You're using a 300 grain sink tip to get the fly down.
It's quite deep as well, was it?
Not necessarily, but probably about 8 or 9 feet where he was. But the kings like to sit in heavy water, so you got to get the fly down. They don't lift up for the fly. You've got to put it in their face.
And what did you catch it on?
A fly my daughter made for me.
Really?
Yeah. She'd got quite good at fly tying, and typical of a 13, 14-year-old girl would make. It was pink, purple and blue, and I just put it on and bang, the fish took it.
So you got a box full of them, no?
We did use it a lot for years, yeah. She's called Fiona, and it got called the Fonzie fly. So you never know, do you?
I bet it must have been the adrenaline, seeing it before you cook it or something.
Yeah, it's one of those things you don't think it's actually going to happen, and then playing it, you think, oh, we're never going to get this. And at one stage, it came into the shallows. It was nothing to do with me. It just happened to do that. And I said to my young guide, David, I said, I reckon if I run below it and put on enormous side strain, I think I'll turn it over in the shallows. And I said, you're going to have one chance to grab the tail. Get it wrong and you're going to die. And suddenly we'd got it.
What sort of breaking strain?
Oh, you only fish 20-pound tippet, because you know if you've got to break, you want the leader to go, not the line. So and you can't pull that sort of poundage anyway, can you, on an ordinary fly rod?
Was it a 10-foot rod?
No, just a 9'9" weight.
Really?
But if you link it up, a rod like that, carry to a spring balance, and just see what you can pull on it. It's not very much.
Going on to your writing, because you've written a few books. Is it 7 books you've written?
I know, yeah.
What was the first one you did?
Oh, it was called Big Trout Fishing, which was a terribly long time ago. And then I did that in conjunction with Roy Westwood when he was editor of Angler's Mail for many, many years. And I was doing a trout column in Angler's Mail, and for whatever reasons we decided to do that book. And you look back at it now and you think, ooch, did I really write that?
You had the bug then, you went to write another one.
Yeah, and I did a fly tying book and all sorts of stuff really.
What was the last one you did?
The last book was just an update on the whole small fishery thing. So it's just bang up to date. Just that came out this year. And that's the one I'm most pleased with, I think. It was published down in Cornwall, and printed in Cornwall, so it's a Cornish collaboration really.
What's involved with doing a book then? Do you publish it yourself?
I did this
or
one,
the design, the artwork, how does it work?
No, I did this one myself, and previously I'd done it through publishers or whatever. And years ago, you'd get quite a nice fee for it. It'd be in 3 stages, one on signing, one on delivery, and then one on publication. And then that gradually went down over the years until you were just getting like a royalty fee per book. And it ended up, I thought, this ain't worth it anymore. So that's why I thought I'd do it myself.
They're the ones that are going to make money, I guess. The publishers, really.
Yeah, but the publisher down in Cornwall, the young lad who did all the work for me on the book, he was a fisherman, and, it was great. He was just so good. And he made a fantastic job of it. So I was really pleased with that.
I'll have to see that one.
Yeah, I got a feeling there's one more book in me, and I'm going to call it "The Fish, People and Places."
You've already got the idea.
Yeah, oh yeah, I've written about 20,000 words so far. But I thought, met so many people like you and that over the years that, and been to lots of wonderful places. If you don't write it, it's gone. You've written many times about your hunt for the big browns in Corrib and stuff, but you really need to get it all down in the.
Well, I've written about it, and I've done 2 podcasts on it, but I don't give everything away. It's something I'm quite protective about, because it all started for me when I was going to Ireland, fly fishing for like years and years, maybe for 20 years, and all of a sudden, this one day, there was a local angler, they had one £20, and he was in the pub, they brought it in, and that was the old record, £21. And when you see it, it changed me. I thought, I got to get one. I've got to get one. Not necessarily a 20, but I wanted a big trout. And then, from that moment on then, I think it was 2002, it became a total obsession in true sense of the word. I would literally, every chance I'd get, if it's a 10-day trip, a week, 3 weeks, I'd be over in Ireland. I got my own boat there. I'd be there some mornings, 4 o'clock in the morning on the lake, more often not, around about 11. And I'd be there until dark, 10:30, 11 o'clock, maybe later. Every day I was there. Whether or not it was wind, rain, hail, snow, whatever. Relentlessness, there's a saying, relentlessness gets rewards. And there's not really anything written about the Ferox, how to catch them. There is one, Ron Greer, I
Yeah,
think.
Ron Greer did it, didn't he? Yeah.
But it's not relevant at all to anything in Corrib, and how to catch them, where they feed, and when they feed, and the depths. There's so much involved there. And what I've learnt in the early days, I was getting them sort of like £8 to £10, getting quite a few, £8 to £10, and I was sneakily going up to about £12, £13, and I'd stopped. Couldn't get one anything bigger. So I changed everything, start from scratch. There's different techniques, different methods, different mounts, different times of the year, different areas. And then I latched on where these bigger fish are. And there is a different method to catching 14-pound trout and a 10-pound trout.
Was it habitat or technique, because you're dealing with an older fish?
The main thing is the mount, the way the roach is fishing.
Right.
That's the main thing. That's the key thing. So many people, you tell them, oh, I had a 10-pound trout, and they think, oh, you wanted trawling. A lot of people think, oh, anyone can have one and trawl. Right? I have fished the highest level fly fishing competitively, and I know what it takes. And I know also what it takes to catch a double-figure brown trout. And it's not easy, so there's a case of putting a roach at the back. If I wanted to take you out now and catch a 12-pound trout, within a day or two, I'd get one. Not every day, but I would get one. By fishing a certain mount and a certain size roach. And then I got bored with doing that, so I wanted a high teen. So the only way to catch a fish a high teen is there's a certain mount which I've devised, but the key thing is, the number one key thing, which it's the number one thing. Big fish come in big weather. When I go there, like you, when you go anywhere for a trip, maybe go for a week, no matter what the weather is, because you're there, you fish anyway. Mm-hmm. If you're living there, you won't do it today.
Pick a good day, yeah. For you.
Now, the times I've gone out there, right, waves much bigger than this room, and you're in the troughs, and the rods are bouncing, and you wouldn't, any sane man, you're not going to do it. Like 4 mile out in the lake, it's like being in the sea, honestly. Oh. And then when that rod goes around, then you know it's going to be big. But when I was saying to catch the big fish, you might get one fish take a fortnight, because there's not many fish you're going to take a roach that size. You do get pike, you do get pike. But it's just, so big weather, bigger the better. Scary weather. What it does to them, I don't know. They're up and about, there's more oxygen in the waves perhaps, and they get hungry, they get turned on. And maybe because you fished days on end and weeks on end at different places, and there is a way, I find when I go to, say, the Corrib, it takes me 3 days to get into the zone, and it's not just a case of going out first day, right, we'll catch a fish sort of thing. Your metabolism is different. You become part of the lake. There's times then, there's a take-in moment. When I've lived on the lake, for like 2-3 weeks at a time, and I've been on the lake, there's a light in the air, and the water turns, the best I can describe, like a mercury to it, right? And there's the warmth in everything comes together, and you think, it's good, right, it'll last under a minute. And I've done it so many times, and I've been switched on then, right? And maybe knocked the engine off, gone on the oars, next thing, you're in.
Wow.
And another thing which have happened, on 3 occasions this have happened, where I'm on the lake, and then there's been another friend of mine, he's fishing 4 mile away, and then that moment happens, and you hook a fish. My mobile's gone, Paul, he said, I've just had a fish. And it's all over the lake. It's something to do with pressure, something we don't understand, but the light as well, And but going back to putting it all down in a book, maybe one day I will. But
yeah, I mean, do it so that it isn't lost, but
yeah.
maybe not make it public yet.
Yeah.
At least get it down.
Yeah.
Because you've done such an incredible thing that you don't want that information lost.
No.
It's part of fishing's heritage, what you achieved.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, it's nice.
But I like your thought there, or your views there about, because I always say if you want a big brown, the dirtier the weather, the better. Even on these small waters.
Yeah.
Like here at Dever. If somebody gets one of the, shall we call them, semi-resident browns, it's usually on a pretty shitty day, particularly late in the day. And there's something about the light, as you say, the atmosphere, the pressure, whatever it is.
You do come in tune to it when you do it all the time.
Yeah, you get an affinity yourself with it, don't you? You just think, today's the day.
I have vouchers available to spend on my online shop, the sign prints, gilly kettles and other accessories, or for one of my guiding tuition packages. Plus now taking bookings for my Corrib Ferox days for next season. Also, don't forget to order Peter's new book, An Ideal Christmas Present. The Patreon members this month gets the opportunity to win a copy in this week's competition. So take this opportunity to sign up to my Patreon page.
One of the things I like doing now is I like to fly fish for carp, which I get a lot of fun out of. And, they're commercial fisheries and all the rest of it. But this week, I'd been watching the weather because it's awful late in the year for carp on the fly. And Monday, this past week, was going to come out dead flat with no rain and very warm, the last of the warm November days. I thought, it's Monday, I'm going to go. And I had a 28-pounder on fly.
Did you?
It's my biggest, but it just was right that day. And I'd been watching that little weather window and thinking, I got to go. And it worked.
A mirror?
Common. Yeah, lovely common, yeah. I mean, I know they're commercial carp waters and all the rest of it, and, you're catching them on a pellet imitation on the top and stuff, but hey, it's fun.
It's good fun, yeah. There's a fishery near me, used to be a trout fishery, called Canada Lake.
Oh, I've heard of this one a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the guys which own it, they made it into a wedding venue now. Mm-hmm. So there's carp in there, there's always been carp in there. But over the years, since they've been doing the weddings, at the end of the day, any food which was left goes in the lake.
Wow.
Right? I mean, there's a lot of voulevons going in that lake. And, it's a big turnover. There's a lot of weddings. You'll have 30 weddings in a month. And so they have anglers just carp anglers going there fishing. But there's one guy fishes here, Jason.
Jason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's living there almost.
I know.
And
We talk a lot about it. He had the 38, didn't he?
yeah, he's
Which
in a
is,
30
as
plus,
far as
yeah.
I know, is the biggest fly caught carp in this country.
Yeah, but they just fed on cakes and
Wow.
stuff, you know. But it's good fun. I've done it with him actually, and as you said, there's a space for it. You know, people enjoy doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it for well over 20 years, and I love it, and it really winds up the boilie boys.
Yeah,
So it's even better.
they could be all camped out with 3 rods, and they'll have one fish for a session, and Jason can go and have about 12 in an hour.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they don't like it. That's They get it banned on a lot of carp waters.
Is it?
Yeah, but okay, that's all right.
That was lovely, the chili con carne.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. So this is your latest book here now, yeah?
Yep. If you look on the spine of the book, there's a Cornish flag at the bottom. See? All Cornish.
The Cross of St. David as well.
It's the flag of St. Piran, actually.
Is it? I think we
That's the
stole it.
patron saint of Cornwall is St. Piran. It's just everything, a complete update on the types of fish, the gear, what to do to get started, the flies, the knots and tactics, and even a little bit of other species at the end, of carp and pike and stuff like that.
It's a nice feel to it. I like the design as well, like you said, the sky.
It's just beautifully done. Yeah, I'm really pleased with it. Yeah.
Have you got a website?
Not anymore. No, I used to have when I had the shop. So now it's been gone mostly through Facebook and stuff. Sportfish are going to take it on. A few other fisheries have got it and things. I just need to get it moving a bit more.
So you've had them printed?
Oh yes, I've got them all. Yeah. If the ceiling gives way on us, we'll be buried under books.
I bet if there's 7 books up there. It's nice tail end of the book. It's a nice touch, isn't it?
That's a tail from a rainbow on Strobo in Argentina, where I go.
Is it?
Where they got that silvering right through the tail.
What's that moment like when you've gone through it a few times and no doubt you think, oh, there's something I could change in it? Do you think, well, that's it now?
You've got to sort of say, yeah, because things do keep changing in fishing. But yeah, you have to say, I've covered it, it's there. I don't want to really go through it all again. It's that's going to have to be it.
I tell you, there was a few people I met over the years who have impressed me, their writing. But one guy I thought was really good was Chris Dawn.
Yeah.
He did have a way with words.
He was an easy writer, wasn't he? And he could just string it together. Dear old Chris, I miss him.
Yeah.
A little bit odd in his many ways, but...
He was, yeah.
But did he catch a big brown over there with you?
Yeah, 9-pound ferox.
I thought he did because the photo of it was on his coffin.
Yeah, that's right. I took that.
Yeah, I wondered if it was with you. Yeah.
9.5 pound it was. Yeah, he did. And I was told after, because I didn't go to the funeral, I think it was Russell was telling me, that his photograph was on
it was right there, yeah.
I fished and met with some names over the years, but one person I missed an opportunity, and that was Bernard Venables.
No, I never got lucky to meet him. Yeah.
And because I've got a couple of his Fishing with Mr. Crabtree books.
Wow.
I got 2 original ones, the first editions, and I remember being brought up with them, looking at the stories, and the father and son, was it Peter?
Peter, yeah.
Yeah. And your mind was lost in this, these little storyboards. And I went then, years later, to, it was a Welsh water presentation promoting Wales fishing something. And who was there that day was Bernard Venables.
Wow.
And I was thinking, damn, I wish I had my book now. For him just to sign it,
Go, yeah.
But he didn't last long after that. And just one of those things, you make the...
I think sometimes you don't quite realise who you're with in terms of the fishing greats. Like meeting up with Dick Walker in the early days of Dameron. When the patterns were evolving, weren't they, for the small fisheries?
Walker's mayfly nymph.
yeah, various flies and things. And, again, I look through my diaries from there, and there's a picture of me with a 4.25 pound rainbow, and the caption says it'll be a long time before I better this, because that was a big fish in its day. And, you know, people think of this mythology of the great days of Avington and stuff, and they were fantastic early days. But again, you look in my diaries and that there, the average weight was 2.25 pound. And there weren't that many giant fish.
Because I thought the bubble had burst for these big rainbows many years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago or more. But there still seems to be a market.
It's still there. People want to catch a big fish, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting how, you know, a place like this here, Deaver Springs, can be very, very busy with people wanting to catch these nice big fish. And Tim Small at Lechlade with his very large fish. Nigel Jackson up the road here with Testwood Fishery with his, you know, if you want to catch a double, that's the place to go, because there's nothing smaller than a double in there. So, okay, you're going to catch a big one. But it's interesting that you and I have been more with wild fish.
Yeah.
Although I'm very happy fishing stocked large fish. I don't have a problem with it. I enjoy it. And it's what I've written about for many, many years, although I think the wild fish was always going to be a thing. And I always admire what you did, chasing those big browns. I'd never have the time or the resources to do it. But I suppose my passion, you see, went into the grayling, because when I caught my first Arctic grayling, I just thought how beautiful it was. They're much prettier than the European grayling. And as time went on, I wanted to catch a big one. And to me, a 3 pound grayling is enormous.
Yes.
I mean, I've never caught an English one that size. I did a 215 on a feature day with Pete Gathercole. That's the way to catch a big grayling.
And, over this country? In this country?
Yeah, on the Itchin that was, and that's my biggest European grayling, English grayling. But I wanted a big Arctic. And I fished a lot of places and I heard amazing stories. And gradually found I wasn't finding out any real truth. And then I looked up the International Game Fish Association for all the different world records, and they do it in spinning or bait and fly, 2 different categories, and then they do it on tippet class, breakage strain of the leader and stuff. And most of those records came from Great Bear Lake in the Northwest Territories for grayling. So I thought, it's got to be Great Bear. So some friends funded me.
In a lake, no? In a lake?
In a lake, yeah. So some friends funded me a trip there. And Great Bear Lake is 9th largest lake in the world. It's gigantic. People go there to fish for lake trout, the char, and they're huge there. But the grayling are absolutely beautiful because the lake is dead clear. And they're really, really pretty. And we caught fantastic grayling up to about 214, like the one in the case over there. But couldn't crack 3 pound. And yet the guys who went and using spinners and stuff, they'd catch some grayling for shore lunch, and they'd always have a couple of 4 pounders. And I thought, oh, how the hell does this happen then? And then we heard somebody brought in a 4 pounder and they were going to have it mounted. So we went down to the freezer room and admired this 2.5 pounder, which apparently was 4 pounds. And so you think, huh? Yeah. And then I got all the pictures from IGFA of the different line class records. And I thought, oh, well, that's how it's done, is it? Okay. And began to realise there's rather a lot of hocus pocus going on here.
Yeah.
And I really, really wanted a big one. I did Great Bear Lake for 10 years. And we got finally up to 3 pounds 6. And fantastic fish, wonderful fish. But by then, I'd got to meet a guy called, I think the chili's got my throat. I met a guy called Fred DeCiso, who'd been fish and game biologist for Alaska for many years. And he spent his life researching char and grayling. And he said, if you want to catch a big Arctic, you're going to have to go somewhere where man doesn't go. Because you're looking for a 30-year-old fish.
30?
30.
So 3 pound Arctic grayling could be 30 years old?
The 4 pounder would be, yeah. And he proved it. Because our grayling here, European grayling, don't go much over 8 years or so. But Fred was going to all these remote streams in Alaska in his work for the Fish and Game Department. And he'd catch grayling and take some scales and tag the fish and pop them back in and read the scales and stuff. And they were 18, 19-inch fish was showing 12 to 13 years on scales. And he'd catch the same fish 3 or 4 years later in these streams, take some scales, do it again. 12 to 13 years. But that's actually 3 or 4 years later, but it's showing the same age. So that's when he thought, something's not right here.
Yeah.
So he then started to catch these fish, and he'd inject the fish with a dye that goes in the bone growth of that year. It's a proven scientific thing on bone growth. And catch the same fish 3, 4 years later, and this time tap it on the head and take out the otolith bone from the vestigial ear bone in the head.
Right.
And that is like a tree trunk, exactly. So he'd slice it, it's a tiny little thing, and there, 3 to 4 years back, was the dye mark for when he'd injected that fish. So he'd then count all the rings back. So fish which were showing 12 to 13 years on scales were actually well over 20.
Wow.
And he'd got the head of one 4-pounder in his freezer, the only 4-pounder he'd ever caught. And he took the ear bone out of that one, and it was 31 years.
So where would you catch those then?
He said you just got to go to really remote places where man doesn't much go.
And that would be in a lake, though?
Oh, no, they could be rivers or lakes. But the Canadian ones tend to really love the lakes, but the Alaskan ones are more rivers. And they're highly migratory. They go from the mouth of the river in the spring where they spawn to the headwaters, often 90 miles away.
90 miles?
Yes, and he's proved it all. Because the river I normally go to, the guides and stuff tell me that when they open the river to set up camp in June, they catch really big grayling around the camp and stuff. And when I get there in July, there aren't any big grayling. They're gone. Because they're now 90 miles upriver.
Would you fish this method now? Everyone seems to be fishing now, the Euro nymphing, French leader.
I've done that here, yeah. I haven't done it in Alaska. I frankly haven't needed to.
Yeah.
But so in the end, what Fred said was probably you ought to look at the Nome area right up on the Bering Straits, because there's no trout up there. It's too far north for rainbows. The salmon aren't anything special, so nobody really bothers with them. There's a lot of char, but the grayling appear to only spawn about every 8 to 10 years, and there aren't any little ones. So I've got a wonderful friend in Colorado who funds me trips. He seems to like me, I don't know why. And we went there for 3 years, and Fred guided us. And it was a helicopter flight into the river, inflatable kayaks, drift down river, camp overnight for a week, different places, and then get picked up by the helicopter.
Yeah.
And we had fantastic grayling. It was hard to catch one under 2 pounds. And we had loads of threes.
Proper wild, isn't it?
Unbelievable country.
Yeah.
And the second year I had a 4.6. So we thought, done it.
4.6?
4.6, done it. Line class record, that'll do. And we went the third year, and we really took a gamble and went very late in the year, thinking the fish might be bigger because of the salmon eggs and all the rest of it. And got really lucky with the weather. And it's interesting, you'd only catch a grayling per 100 yards of river. And sometimes you'd find a little bunch of them. And that particular day, my friend Lou had a 4.6 on a dry. He only ever fished dry fly, fished a renegade dry. And I'd happily fish a nymph. And I had a 4.2. Then Lou got another 4-pounder. And we're sort of over the moon. And then I did it, and I had a 5-pound one.
Wow.
And
you got photographs of these?
Hmm?
Have you actually got photographs?
I've got a
these?
model of it as well. And so I stopped fishing. I mean, I cried my eyes out when I caught that, Ceri. You know,
Yeah.
I'd done everything I could ever want to do. And So I spent my day spotting for my friend Lou, and he ended up with 8 4-pounders on dry. Nobody will ever do that again.
Yeah.
And you can't get there anymore. The native people's closed the river,
Is
so
it?
you can't get there. So yeah, we did it.
That sort of trip is a trip of a lifetime, isn't it? I love this remoteness of it all. The closest I've done to anything like that, I've been up to the north of Sweden a few times, and there's this one guy, the guide I was with, his name was Per Eriksson, and he was like about 6'10". He made Grizzly Adams look like an office boy. If you saw a bear, you'd want to be with him.
Wow.
And very dry, speaking like this. And we had a helicopter up into the mountains, Havlingen, and we rode across a lake onto this cabin then. And it was quite unnerving, actually, the remoteness of it, because we were there for 3 days and that's it.
There's nobody there, is there?
No,
No.
and there's no birds, which is deathly silent. It was
Oh,
strange. And but anyway, I had a most amazing trip, a memorable trip. But each day we were out and he was cooking lunch. He'd have elk, reindeer, berries, and he would give me a can of lager, and he would have orange juice every day. So on the third day, I thought, why isn't he drinking? So I said, Per, how come you're not drinking the lager? He says, I do not drink alcohol. I said, all right, any reason for that? And he says, too many female hormones in alcohol.
What?
Yeah. I thought, how do you work that out? Wait till the boys back home hear about this. I said, how do you work that out? Start talking shit and can't drive. Coming from him, so dry, I rolled on the floor. But and he had like a half a grin then as well, But the remoteness is great.
I love the remote countries. I suppose that's why I love Alaska so much.
Yeah.
There's nobody there in a lot of places. Great Bear, where I used to fish with my friend Lou, we were the only people who would ever fish off the shore, because everybody's out trolling for lake trout and the grayling around the shore. And so the only people who ever fished off the shoreline. I always remember the day we were fishing together, and I said to Lou, Lou, there isn't a sound, like you were saying, no bird song, nothing. And a little while later, I said it again. I said, Lou, there isn't a sound. He said, yes, there is. It's your bloody constant yapping. Okay, then I'll shut up. Next year I'm going out to Kodiak again, which I love to fish for steelhead. And it's in an unbelievably remote camp we go to.
How many days would you have there then?
Pardon me?
How many days would you have there then?
It's a week's fishing. So it really, really is remote. There is no one there, just you and the guides.
And a cabin or
It's
something?
tented camp.
Oh.
Yeah, it really is remote.
Oh, that'd be right up my street.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm very, very happy there. And too much to the guides' concern, I tend to wander off on my own.
Yeah.
But it doesn't worry me. I'm really happy.
To photograph something like that, the whole trip would be something.
Oh, you'd love it from the photographer side of things.
I find sometimes I'm torn when I go fishing. Sometimes I got the camera one side of my head and a rod the other side, thinking, what do I do? But,
yeah, I mean, we mentioned earlier about Pete Gathercole that who's I've worked with him for 30 odd years. That's why I miss the feature days and stuff. But some days we'd be out on a job, say, and maybe it wasn't working too well, but then we'd sort of look at each other and go, "It's now, isn't it?" And we'd know that we were going to catch a fish, but also it was right for him with the camera.
Yeah.
And somehow you have that affinity of feeling, don't you? That you sort of know what's going to happen. It's going to be now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's creepy, like you were saying about the, out on the wild water and the light changing and
Yeah.
it's going to be now.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, you can feel it, can't you? There was a time I fished in County Ceri with Chris Dawn once, the upper lake in Killarney, and it's steep side mountains all the way around. And I remember we were fishing, drifting, having lovely little trout, beautiful. And then you were just looking around, taking it all in, and it was breathtaking. And then I stopped fishing, and he said, what's the matter? I said, look at it. And the way the wind was blowing, the clouds and the sun, it was, you can imagine painting the mountains all around. And I said, you can actually feel music emanating from the land. You can almost hear music. And
Wow.
it's almost like I can tell where Enya get her inspiration from.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I can remember him sitting there, he's going, bloody hell, he said, as who he was, And he mentioned that in the
Oh, wow.
in the article then. But sometimes people don't take notice of what's around. They're just
they
thinking
don't.
of the front of that line.
No. I mean, the guides sometimes say to me in Alaska, are you all right, Pete? Yeah. But you haven't been fishing for an hour. I said, no, it's all right. I'm just watching the fish and I'm okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And I like doing that, just seeing what's going on.
Yeah.
But you're right that people don't see stuff, because when I'm guiding or teaching and stuff, it's so common to see a particular bird or sight or see a fish or something, and you point it out to the client, and they don't see it until you really, really point it out, because they don't have that affinity with nature, shall we call it, and they just don't see stuff. I think we've been probably very, very lucky,
Yeah, yeah. I think we've seen the best of it.
I rather feel the same. Yeah, I really do.
Yeah. Like how many people would get a buzz now of catching a pound trout? Not many people. There's a book, you probably got it here. It's called Mastering the Nymph by Gordon Fraser.
Yeah.
I think it's that book. And at the front, the foreword, it says, when you start to fish, you want to catch a fish.
Mm-hmm.
When you've done that, you want to catch the most fish. When you've done that, you want to catch the biggest fish. And when you've done that, there's only one thing left, to catch the hardest fish. And it's like, you look back and there's a cycle, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You've done so much, but now you get so much pleasure just catching a wild fish.
Yeah, I often think there's another little classification in that one.
Yeah,
It's being with someone else and seeing them catch it, and being able to put that knowledge of yours through to them to let them succeed. I really, really like that side of things now. I know I can catch that fish, and I'm not too bothered. But if I can help someone else to catch it, I absolutely love that. It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah, I can see that.
It's the different stages you go through.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you about the wild fish. I've got this thing that I've got to go back on one of the trips down to Cornwall and fish the streams where I learnt all my fishing, just to remember each pool and just catch those gorgeous little fish again. And Colliford, I got to do that one.
Definitely. We'll have to have a day down there. Definitely next year, no?
This is what I call my war cabinet.
Lovely.
It's the books.
Oh, that's right. I remember now. You were into your reels, weren't you?
Oh God, the Able reels. Yeah, I mean, I'm so sad. Look, I had this one made in the colours of an Arctic Grayling's dorsal.
Wow.
I mean,
Well,
how
you had
pathetic
it
are
made?
you?
You
Yeah,
had it
they
made?
made 10 of it for me. But all the sort of things you collect and all sorts of weird things, and
What's the certificate there?
that's the world record certificate. Oh no, that's the one from Alaska for the Alaska state record.
Right.
But I mean, this is a little grayling made from walrus ivory.
Wow.
And I've got another one made from mammoth ivory. Just little things, but a couple of years ago I did a thing for the Grayling Society presentation. They wanted to raise some money for something. So I got one of these walrus ones and I put it in a special little box and everything, and I put a label on it and everything. It said Arctic Grayling carved from walrus ivory by native Yupik from the village of Quinnahock, Alaska. You know, all look good. I couldn't put the chap's name down there.
Why is that?
He's called John Smith.
Is it really?
Took the magic away, didn't it?
I can see your love for Grayling, right?
Oh,
Look at that
yeah.
there, though.
The guy that made this in Alaska, one evening.
He made it in one evening?
He made it in one evening.
Spectacular.
How do you
isn't
do
it?
that?
I like that a lot.
I said, it's mine.
Yeah. Have you weighed it?
He just sat there with pliers, he did, and just made it one
Made
evening.
a wire.
Yeah, creepy things.
So this is a collection of your books as well then, yeah?
Yeah, all the different ones over the years, yeah. Me and Gary did the first video. Fly fishing in clear waters. Me and Gary, with Taff Price, me and Gary Brooker. It was the first of the videos that were ever done. Dear old Gary. When he died, his wife asked me if I'd speak at the funeral. And, okay, all right, but, you know, there's going to be some amazing rock stars there because of what he is. So I managed to...
He did The White, the Shade of Pale, he wrote it, yeah?
Yeah, wrote it and sang it, yeah. And so I did my little bit and I told a story about him and stuff and people loved it. And then Eric Clapton got up and with a guy called Andy Fairweather Lowe, and they played a few ditties. And then Eric sang Tears from Heaven, the one he wrote about his boy when he fell out the apartment in New York.
Yeah, remember that.
There wasn't a dry eye in the place. If I'd had to follow him, I'd never have done it.
Wow. Wow. I noticed you got a Jim Teeny fly box.
Oh yeah, well, Jim's been a great friend for such a long time.
I tell you who's doing well for himself, is going to America, is Davey Wooten.
Yeah, he's done well, hasn't he? Yeah, he just made a comment today on my Facebook about the carp I caught the other day. We still keep in touch.
It's his birthday today, fair enough.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Because we used to meet in Vineyards days.
Yeah. I remember going to his house in Cumbran, Monocourt, right up the top of this council estate. And this is a long, long time ago. I remember going into his house. His fly tying room was all sweet jars. The wall of sweet jars, you know, like a sweet shop with all the materials in.
Oh, wow.
And in the kitchen then was a pot. You couldn't put your arm around it. Big, deep pot with a big wooden spoon. And I was looking at it. I said, what's that then? He said, have a look, he said. So I went over, and it was black gunge it was. But cut long story short, that was the very first SLF. He used to buy this yarn, dye it, and he'd have girls then to cut it up. And that's where SLF
Good
started.
Lord. I mean, yeah, he's very innovative, no doubt about that.
Yeah. We've got a lovely collection, eh?
Walk this way. You have to be just careful coming past here. She likes her stuff.
Oh, this is your tying room.
That's the model I had made of the Grayling.
Wow.
That's
Look at that fin.
That's how big a 5 pound Grayling is.
And that's more or less the measurements and everything.
Yeah, it's dead on for the measurements, yeah. I got to make a new case and have it downstairs. It shouldn't be up here out of sight.
No.
But it used to be in the shop, you know, where lots of people saw it, obviously.
Yeah.
But what I was just going to say, look at the mouth, Ceri. All right.
Yeah.
Now, the mouth of the Grayling you're used to is like this.
Yes.
It's an overbite, isn't it?
Yeah.
Arctics aren't. They're the other way round.
Somewhat red, like.
Yeah, but they're highly predatory, those things. I've caught them on mice, almost as big as the fish itself. And they're just highly predatory.
I love that.
And you think, you stupid thing, you're so beautiful, you should be taking little dry flies, not a fucking great lure.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to speak more. We've had a most gorgeous meal while we've been chatting as well. But I think there's another podcast in time. Perhaps I'll come down again and then chat more about Diva Springs. And more be small waters and look back on the other waters which you fished. Before I actually wrap up and get my cameras here, I'm going to get my lighting as well, I guess, some of those photographs so we to go over this. There's one question I ask everyone to finish off. Well, where would you want to be to make your last cast?
Ooh, there's a good one. To make my last cast, oh my goodness. I suppose it's going to have to be home in Cornwall, because I'm Cornish and that's it. So yeah, down there I guess. But it's interesting because Sue and I have spoken about the end of days, because I'm getting to be an old git these days. And I said, I just want to be cremated and that's the end of it. And I'd often said that I'd like my ashes scattered on my favourite water, on the basis that if I can catch them when I'm alive, at least I can choke the little bastards when I'm dead. But she then said, she said, okay then, so I'll sprinkle your ashes on your favourite waters. So it'll be somewhere that's really sunny, like Florida, the Seychelles. I said, that's not my favourite places. But she said, well, it will be. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I think the last cast is going to have to be in Cornwall.
Many thanks, Peter.
It's been a lot of fun, Ceri. I'm so pleased we've been able to catch up after such a long time.
It is.
I've really enjoyed this.
If you've enjoyed this podcast and want to listen to more, please consider becoming a Patreon, where you will get access to over 100 past episodes, weekly podcasts, plus photography, exclusive content and prizes. To join, visit patreon.com/Casting with Ceri Jones or see the link on my website, castingwithcerijones.com. Well, that's all for now. Tight lines and don't strike too soon.